The sun is shining where I am today, but it is cold. It is definitely cold. All right, well, today we are talking about happiness. And the most common reasons that I see that people are not happy. If you're jumping on live here, please say hello so I know who's with us. You can just comment. And then also, as I'm going through the top reasons why most people aren't as happy as they could be, if any of that sounds familiar to you, please feel comfortable just popping into the comments and being like, hey, you know what, this is a common one for me, or, oh, I hadn't thought about that, I do this, right? And then we can have a dialogue about that. Because most of these things that I'm going to be talking about this morning are things that it's not just one or two people are doing these, but literally everyone seems to be doing these things. And so we want to shed some light on that and help make it possible for people to be aware of what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, what I really want you to realize is that you deserve to be happy. And simply by taking a look at the things that we're going to talk about today, you can bring more happiness into your life. And who doesn't want that? Okay, so getting started here. Hello, Bill. Hi, thanks for saying hello. We are going to take a look at the top reason, the number one thing that I see. And that is what was a few years ago shared to me. Somebody used the expression that the deferred happiness plan. Okay. Now, at the time that I first heard that expression, I thought, what does that even mean? So I'm going to tell you what that means because most people are choosing to be on the deferred happiness plan. Okay. So have you ever found yourself thinking, well, I'll be happy when this happens, right? Or I'll be happy when that happens. So for example, it might sound something like, I'll be happy when I get promoted, or I'll be happy when I can stop working overtime, or I'll be happy when the kids graduate from high school, or I'll be happy when I lose 50 pounds, right? It could sound like any of these things, depending on you, your goals, and your life circumstances, right? So that, if you've had any of those thoughts or similar thoughts, I'll be happy when I'm famous. I'll be happy when I make this much money. I'll be happy when I'm married, right? All of those thoughts would indicate to you that you've put yourself on this deferred happiness plan, which basically just means that internally you're thinking of happiness as being something that needs to be achieved, or the result, or you're thinking that happiness is the result of having done something. Okay. So, when you think about that, the problem with that is that you're programming yourself to create this elusiveness around happiness. You're programming your mind and your body to think that you have to wait in order to be happy. So the reason you're not happy right now is literally because you're telling yourself that you can't be. You're telling yourself that, hey, this thing has to happen before I can experience happiness. And then the problem that we see is that when that becomes a pattern, you stay in that pattern. So even when these things happen, your brain and your body have already set up the next criteria. You've already conditioned yourself to quickly move on to the next thing that has to happen in order for you to feel happy. Okay? So I want you to think about that just for a minute. Just think, in what ways have you done this? In what ways have you set a standard that says, hey, I'm not allowed to be happy until this thing happens, or until those people do this, right? And what you're really doing is just conditioning yourself to really never experience happiness, because you're thinking of it, again, in these elusive terms as something that you have to wait to experience. So that's what that deferred happiness plan means. And if that's resonating with you, if you have those thoughts, then I'm going to suggest you pay even closer attention to the next things I'm going to share with you, because you definitely want to get off that train, right? You want to be on a different plan, and you definitely want to learn to think about and experience happiness in a different way. So the second thing that I see commonly occurring in people that want to be happier is that they are doing one of two extremes. And that is either they're faking it, right? So they're pretending to be happy and they're doing it under this guise of, well, fake it till you make it, right? Like, well, if I want to feel happy, then I just have to tell myself that I'm happy, right? And so they just fake the happiness, yeah? But it doesn't work, right? It doesn't actually lead to them being a happier person. And the other extreme of that same type of thing are people that won't allow themselves to notice or experience moments of happiness because they feel guilty over something else, right? It's like they expect that, well, in order for me to be happy, then everything has to be going well. Everything in my life has to be perfect in order for me to be happy. So if this person is experiencing, a life struggle or a situation that really warrants a different feeling, perhaps grief or disappointment, which are just life experiences, then they feel like they have to make those feelings big enough to cover everything in their life. It's like they're carrying those feelings around with them. And even though there's these experiences that could bring about happiness for them, they refuse to see them. They won't allow themselves to feel happy because they're carrying this grief with them or this sadness with them, right? And so to me, this doing that and then also faking it, I put into one category, because what's really happening is that in both situations, you are denying yourself the range of human emotions. You're denying yourself the ability to articulate your feelings, and that it is normal to experience more than one feeling at a time. It is normal to experience different feelings for different circumstances. So in both scenarios, on either end of the extremes, what you're really doing is you're masking who you are. You're masking what your thoughts are. You're masking what your feelings are, right? And so when we begin to do that, then what we wind up with, the result of that, is kind of like this middle sense of numbness, right? So we don't want to acknowledge or experience maybe what we perceive as unhappiness, because we've got some judgment around that, or we have some guilt around that. And so instead we're masking that. But that's not sustainable, because that's not how we are as humans. Okay. So that's the number two, I guess the biggest thing that I see in that prevents people from being as happy as they could be, in that they're really just trying to almost meld all of their feelings or emotions together. Which brings me to the third thing, which is the inability to accurately identify, acknowledge, and express your thoughts and your feelings. Okay, so let me expand on that for a little bit. If we go back to what I said in number 2 about how all of these things kind of blend together into this general, undefinable sense of being, when we're not able to do that, when we're not able to take each of these pieces apart and clearly identify them and acknowledge them, really look at them, then we're unable to keep perspective on them. We're unable to analyze our own perspective and say, hey, is this true? Is this what's really happening over here, right? So then what happens is that it all just kind of piles up, muddies itself together, and then we come out with this general, like, well, I don't know, I'm just not happy, right? Like, I don't know what's wrong, right? And the longer that we carry on in that habit, the more that we've programmed ourselves to feel comfortable telling ourselves that we don't know, okay? So those are the 3 biggest things that I see and hear from everyone, really, is they're definitely doing at least one of them, if not all of them. So what does that mean? That means that if you want to experience more happiness, then the first thing I want you to do is really understand what happy means. Okay. And to that extent, I'm Googling the definition and I'm going to read it for you, because I do find that, again, the inability to be specific in understanding what happy even means. So the definition of happy actually is a feeling or showing of pleasure or contentment, having a sense of confidence in or satisfaction with, a willingness to do something, right? So if we think about that for a moment, a lot of times people confuse being a happy person with joy, right? Happiness and joy are two different things. Or they confuse being happy with a sense of excitement. They think, oh, if I'm a happy person, then I have to be up here all the time, right? And again, what you're doing is you're limiting yourself to actually understanding how much happiness, how much contentment and satisfaction you are actually experiencing, because you're labeling it or you're thinking about it in a way that's limiting you, right? So the first thing you want to do is really get clear in your own mind about what happiness means. And by doing so, then you can be honest with yourself about the mindset you have around happiness. Because most often what we find is that people are carrying around a lot of limiting beliefs about themselves and about what being happy really means. Okay, so how do you identify that? Well, ask yourself two questions, and your answers to these questions are going to be very telling. Do you think of happiness as a result, as something that comes from the accomplishment of a task, or somebody else doing something outside of you? If you're thinking of happiness in that particular way, which directly correlates back to what I described as the deferred happiness plan. I'll be happy when this happens. I'll be happy when I graduate from school, right? I'll be happy when I get engaged. I'll be happy when I'm done paying for the kids' college, right? If you're thinking of happiness as the end result of something, then that's your first indicator that you really need to take a look at your own belief systems around your ability to be happy and what happiness really means. Because you will not achieve happiness, right, as long as you're limiting your ability to even recognize it for what it is. And the second question to ask yourself is, do you believe that you have to earn the right to be happy, right? So these questions are closely linked, but they allow you to identify your own mindset in regards to happiness. And anything that I talk about, anything that we work with people on here at Onward Endeavors, it involves mindset and skill set, because those are two categories that you need. You can't accomplish any change in your life without addressing the mindset and also the skill set. So the mindset piece with happiness is really like, what do you believe about being happy? And then your ability, how are you looking at it? Because when you can be honest about your beliefs without judging them, then that gives you the information you need to know where do you need to adjust your mindset in order to feel differently. And then with that comes the skill set piece, because there are actually skills involved in being a happy person. And that may not be something that you've thought about before, right? But we want to be very intentional and we want to be very practical about how you can be happier than you are right now. So the skill set around that is going to be, are you connected? Are you aware? Are you paying attention to the connection between your mind and body? Do you know the difference? Can you clearly feel the difference between physical sensations that you experience in your body and the feelings or the emotions that you have that are coming from thoughts, right? And the key here would be the way you interpret situations or the meaning that you assign to them, right? And an example of this would be, look anywhere in the world, right? So whatever's happening in the world at any given moment, you're going to find people that feel happy about it, and you're going to find people that feel depressed about it, about the same situation. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is in those two people, right? The difference is in those two people's mindsets and skill sets and the way they interpret the information. So for you, you want to take a look at, do you have the skill set to actually be aware of the way you're interpreting information, right? And you can kind of take a look at that. There's a word called metacognitive, okay? And I suggest looking that word up if you've never heard it before. What it's really referring to is your own ability to be aware of your internal processes. This is a skill. It's a skill that if you don't have, you can get. And if you kind of have it, but not all the time, well, then you can practice it and get better. And being metacognitive will help you make that connection between your mind and body so that you can be intentional about your thoughts, which is then going to allow you to be intentional about your feelings, right? And then you're getting to the point where you're literally like able to create more happiness if that's what you desire, right? Not everybody actually does. But if it is, and if you're here, then it probably is something that you desire. That's what's going to help you, right? So the skill set in doing that. And then the third piece to the skill set that I want to emphasize is your ability to identify, acknowledge, and express your thoughts and your feelings. Okay, it's only within our own comfort with the entire range of feelings and our ability to acknowledge them, to not be afraid of them, that we then grow to be capable of experiencing all of the feelings. So if you want to be happier, take a look at how comfortable are you being sad? How comfortable are you acknowledging when you're disappointed about something? Because again, if your habit is to just cover it up, well, we'll just ignore it until it goes away, right? Then you're probably not going to be able to clearly see, focus on, and enjoy the happiness that could also be available to you. So, yes, and you are right. Everyone individually defines their happiness. Thank you for that comment. And that's why I try to keep the language around these things as general concepts, because each one of you really does need to figure out through that internal inspection really into your thoughts and your feelings to figure out what does being happy mean to you, right? And so that's where that connection and getting to know yourself and being aware and that skill set of being metacognitive is required. It's just necessary, right? So again, the mindset piece and the skill set piece, very, very important. And then the last thing I want to mention on the skill set piece is what I refer to as emotional lag time. Okay, and you might have a different term for this, but this is what I call it, just how I think of it, is the amount of time that it takes for you to go from experiencing a particular emotion that maybe you don't enjoy, to coming back to a state of, or a sense of happiness or a sense of contentment. Okay, because remember, that's the word that was used in the definition of happiness, is contentment. It's not a state of ecstasy. It's not a state of elevated joy, right? Those are separate feelings. So in you being happy, what that real definition is contentment. And that will look different for everyone based on their preferences and their lifestyles, okay? So your ability to experience a sadness or grief or worry or anxiety and acknowledge it and look at it and then process that feeling is directly related to your ability to then move through it and get back to that state of contentment or that state of happiness, okay? So just to kind of recap that, what we're really talking about is don't be on the deferred happiness plan. Don't be programming yourself to think that you have to wait to be happy. Happy is something that you can experience today, and you deserve it. You don't have to earn it. So if that's not the sense that you have, then what you're doing is you're looking at your mindset and your skill set, right? And you're determining, where do you have work to do? Is it on the mindset piece or is it on the skill set piece? And as with anything that we talk about here, you are welcome to put your comments in. You're welcome to ask questions. You are welcome to send me a direct message. Really anything that can be helpful to you, that's what we're here to do. And for each other as well. Now, last week we were talking about fear. Today we're talking about happy. I'm a big believer that you can do a lot of this internal work on your own, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to do the work. And maybe that seems a little bit odd for me to say since I'm a coach, right? But you're the one that has to do it, right? Like I can't make you happy, right? So what I can do is I can bring up opportunities for us to talk about this. And I can also give you the opportunity to identify, hey, here's another perspective, right? How am I looking at these things? Now, I will include a link in the comments here to my scheduling calendar. November is a very busy month for me, but I have cleared out really a handful of spaces. There's not that many, maybe 5 or 6 spots where you can schedule a call and we can speak directly about where you're at. So, maybe it's about how you feel on some of the things we discussed today, or thoughts that you have about some of the fears that we talked about last week, or goals that you have. And again, I make these calls available. They're free. The purpose of them is to really help you get clarity on where you're at, clarity on where you want to go, and clarity on, are you headed in the right direction, and is this work that you're really doing a good job of doing on your own? Or would you like help? Would you like assistance? And what does that look like? So when I post the link, please feel free to click on there and choose a time that works for you. And if not, then just stay in the group. We'll talk about these things. I'm really here to help you to the best of your ability because I've been there, right? I have been through so many life transformations, and specifically about happiness. To be honest, I used to think that it was something that was just kind of going to show up, right? And then I learned that it's something we have to be intentional about. We have to create that, and that means taking ownership of it for ourselves and recognizing that we're in control. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful Friday, and I look forward to hearing and speaking with you all soon. Thanks.